Let's start section 9.1, which is an introduction to probability. So we're going to start this section with a scenario. So what you're going to do is you're going to toss 2 coins in the air and observe whether 0, 1, or 2 heads occurs. So that's the scenario we have, and now I want to ask the following question. I want to know how likely are these events? In other words, I want to know how often do you get 0 heads? Or 1 head? Or 2 heads? So one way you could answer this question is you could perform an experiment. So let's do that. You perform an experiment where you flip 2 quarters 50 times. And you're going to record, for each time you flip them, you're going to record how many heads you observed. Okay, so if you want to, you could do this little experiment, but you don't have to. I'll just set up and tell you how many times each event occurred. So I'm going to make a nice little table here. We're going to record how many times we got 2 heads, 1 head, and 0 heads. So I'm going to start with the frequency. And the frequency is how many times this occurred. So how many times did I get 2 heads? Let's say in our experiment we got 11 times we got 2 heads. 27 times we got 1 head, and 12 times we got no heads. So from this we can construct what's called a relative frequency. And so you just take the frequency and divide by how many times the experiment was done. And then we're going to convert this into a percentage. So this would be 22%, 27 out of 50, 54%, and 12 out of 50, that would be 24%. So let's sum up what we learned from our experiment. It looks like if you look 2 heads and 1 heads, the percentages is that they're about the same. But then if you look at 1 head, it's about twice as much as the other 2. So I'll say it looks like you are twice as likely to get 1 head versus either 2 heads or 0 heads. Okay, and then why is this the case? So again, I'm going to ask myself, why is this true? Why is this the case? So to answer this question, what you need to do is you need to think of the possible outcomes. So let's draw a little diagram to picture two heads. The only way I can get two heads is if both quarters come up heads. And I'm going to call the first quarter A and the second quarter B. How can I get one head? Well, A could come up heads and then B come up tails, or A could come up tails and B could come up heads. So there are two ways of getting one head. And then to get 0 heads, well, both A and B would have to come up tails. So we've written out all the possible outcomes that you could get if you flip 2 coins. So how many total were there? There were 4 different possibilities. And so there was a 1 in 4 chance of obtaining 2 heads. There was a 1 in 4 chance also of obtaining 0 heads. And there was a 2 in 4 chance of obtaining 1 head. And so these numbers match. 1 and 4, that's about 25%. So these two match up with the percentages we got in our experiment. 2 and 4, that's about 1/2 or 50%. Again, that kind of coincides with what we observed in our table from our experiment.